Production funding for this program is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
As children, we often dream of playing professional sports or being a NASA astronaut and flying into space. Well, we're here with the only person to be drafted into the National Football League who's also flown in space. And he did it not just once, but twice. It's time to join us for a conversation with Leland Melvin. And for starters, Leland, you have a very unique childhood where both of your parents were educators, right, and that formed a lot of interesting experiences along the way. But give us a little bit of context. So start with your childhood and some of the experiences like a chemistry set, an explosion, and some of the crazy things that really shaped your future.
Right. Well, thank you, Jeremy, for letting me on a conversation. You know, grew up in a small town, Lynchburg, Virginia. Both of my parents were middle school teachers. And, you know, one of the things about being in a small town is that everyone knows when you do something wrong. And I remember one time getting a spanking from in elementary school on the way home and then from my dad, but these are all hands of love trying to make me do the right thing.
Right.
But my mom gave me this non-OSHA certified age-appropriate chemistry set when I was probably in 6th grade, and I mixed these two dissimilar chemicals together and created the most incredible explosion in her living room. Burned a hole in her carpet, you know. Got another hand in my development.
Another hand of love, I'm sure, absolutely.
And then, but that activated my brain. I mean, that was one of these hands-on experiential moments for STEM education that told me I could be a scientist. And I became a chemistry major in college because of that one intervention. So I think in my community, we were always doing things, building things, creating things, because we didn't have a lot of money. You know, my parents were school teachers, and I remember one summer my dad brought a Marita bread truck. Okay, this big old van truck with Marita bread around the side of it. And then, okay, are we going to the bread business or that? Right. And he said, no, that's our camper. And so
you're like, Dad, come on, this isn't cool.
Yeah, I mean, come on, you know, we got bread truck in the driveway. And so that summer we fixed this bread truck and turned it from a bread truck. And it wasn't until it got painted that I realized it was our RV now. It was not a bread truck anymore. But electrical engineering, rewiring it, making bunk beds that flip down, mechanical engineering, and plumbing a propane tank into a Coleman stove. You know, so we were chemical engineering. So we're doing all these things, hands-on experiential. I was learning more about being an engineer with my dad, who was not an engineer. He was a language arts teacher.
And all this was at a very young age, though. I mean, how old were you when you're doing this?
I was probably in 7th grade or 8th grade, you know, so very young, but, you know.
But obviously he had a vision, and you as a child, you didn't see the vision, but all of a sudden you start seeing it come to life, and it's like, wait a second, this is something that's really cool, and it's fun, and it's engaging,
right.
And that really paved the way. And you know, one of the other things that, to me, is a very unique storyline is obviously the football.
Right.
And there's a story that I know you tell that's it's kind of funny, but obviously it pushes on support and
right.
the importance of not giving up.
Right.
Share the story of your senior year and the either the drop or the catch, we'll say.
It's the drop catch, right? No, I was a senior in high school. We were playing our homecoming game against Rustburg High School, and we were down by a touchdown, 2 minutes to go. I'm lined up on the sideline, running down the sideline. Stan Hull was the quarterback. He dropped back, threw the most perfect spiral into the end zone. I'm running in the end zone. The crowd is screaming. All my friends are back from college, who are now freshmen in college, and they're back and they're screaming. And I'm looking up at this ball coming in my hands, and I've already won the game. You know, it's already, you know, I've already caught it. And as I look up and look down, the ball is on the ground. The crowd went from dead silence, right?
And this is homecoming, all your friends, your family.
Exactly. You know that scenario, right? Go to the sideline. My coach, Jimmy Green, looks me in the eye, grabs my face mask. I'm thinking I'm going to get pushed to the bench. He says, Leland, I believe in you. Get back out there and catch the ball. I go to the huddle kind of in a very sheepish way. Okay, the coach wants us to run the same play again. And Stan's like, well, you just dropped my touchdown pass. We're not going to give you another ball. So I line up, 352, running down the sideline. This time I'm praying, Lord, please let me catch this ball as I'm going into the end zone. The ball, another perfect spiral, same location. This time I catch the ball. We win the game. But the thing that I did not know was that there was a college scout from the University of Richmond in the stands looking to see if I could, you know, play at Richmond. Ended up, he walked out of the stadium on the first drop. heard the crowd screaming again, looked back over, saw me in the end zone, you know, doing a little dance.
Doing your dance, right.
And he said, well, maybe he can play for us after such a horrific failure. And I just give that as a testament to my coach, who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. And the community, we think about people in Memphis and here that believe in our kids and do things to help our kids believe in themselves when they don't even believe in themselves.
Right.
And that's something that was really transformative for me as a child.
Carry that forward to playing at the University of Richmond. You set a ton of records as a wide receiver. And then translating that over to being drafted in 1986 by Detroit Lions.
Right. So, you know, went to Richmond as a freshman, not being one of those blue chipper, all-universe players out of high school, and just worked really hard. My freshman year, we went 0-10. And I went back home after my, you know, that season, and people were like, how many games you win? You know, we didn't do too well. But they wanted to hear goose egg, you know.
Right, right.
But through all of that, you know, I was a chemistry major, and lots of times I missed practice, actually, to go to chemistry lab. And I asked my coach when I signed the letter of intent, I said, hey, look, you know, can I play football here and be a chemistry major? Which is a lot of schools will not let those kids be, you know, technical scientists or engineers because of the coursework. But I ended up missing most of the 2 hardest days of practice because I had to go to chemistry lab because it was a small school. So he kept his end of the bargain and let me get my degree in chemistry. Senior year, we did well. We, you know, were 8-5, went to the playoffs, and got a lot of notice from professional scouts, and they came down and timed me. I didn't go to the combine or anything. And so, you know, senior year, 1986, NFL college draft, I get a phone call from the Detroit Lions at 11 o'clock. I think it was 11:15 p.m.
So you still remember the exact time?
I remember. I'm
so
sitting there in my room.
You get the call, and all of a sudden it's like,
yeah.
No.
Leland, we want to draft you in the 11th round. Do you want to, you know, play with the Detroit Lions? Yeah.
Do you really have to ask them on?
Right. And so I went to a mini camp right after that, about a week after that. And the catch that I made in the end zone against one of their, you know, veteran defensive backs ended the practice. The coach was happy to see that his rookie wide receiver could beat his, you know, his old guy there. And came back, graduated from college, and then went to training camp, the real training camp in, I think, the August timeframe, and pulled a hamstring in training camp. And that was pretty much the end of my career because it was a chronic hamstring pull. Made it to the final cut, and then went to the Toronto Argonauts for a practice contract for 2 weeks. And my agent said, come home and sign with Dallas for the next season, which would have been the 87
Dallas Cowboys.
season. Dallas Cowboys, Tom Landry, you know. And so after signing, I started working as a research assistant for a professor at the University of Virginia in material science engineering. Because he was like, well, you can come work for me while you're waiting to go to Dallas. And then in January of '87, he said, well, why don't you enroll in the master's degree in material science? I'm like, well, I'm leaving in 3 months to go to minicamp at Dallas. He said, no, we can work this out.
So you're enrolled in a master's program while you're in the NFL about to go to Dallas.
Yes. So January, I take 2 courses. They're TV courses, math for material science and electrochemistry. I leave in March to go play with Dallas to practice, and they videotape the courses and mail them to me. So by day, catching footballs for America's team. At night, I'm watching material science engineering. And then I go out one day with Danny White, who wants to throw some passes with me. He's, you know, trying to keep his job. And I'm stretching, coming off that hamstring injury. And so he says, let's run a half-speed 10-yard out. I said, okay. I'm on the line. Danny's there. I see Tom Landry walking on the field. Danny's trying to keep his job. I see this whole thing playing out.
Right.
So he does an audible from a half-speed out to take it to the barn.
Because he wants to push it a little bit to
exactly.
impress.
And so he throws it as far as he can, and perfect spiral. Same kind of thing from high school, and I'm going for it, and next thing I know, poof, and I popped my hamstring again. So that was the end of my football career, but long story short, you know, it led me back to going back to graduate school, finished my degree at UVA, then went to work for NASA, and then so that led me on to other things. So I thank Danny White for helping me get the space.
That's he pushed you. Talk about, you know, that transition, because in some ways, so you work so hard to be a professional athlete, and you get that chance. And obviously on your end, you kind of got 2 parallel tracks going at the same time. But a part of that, was there a part of you where it's like, wait a second, all this time and effort here, and now I have to pivot? Was there any sort of reflection there, or not necessarily regret, but was it a hard piece to kind of do the soul searching on?
I think for me, because I never imagined myself, one, as a college football player, more or less a professional football player, it was kind of a thing that, you know, I was going to ride it as long as I could. I mean, I knew that I've always wanted to be a scientist or an engineer. That was my real love and desire and goals. And so when the hamstring came up for the second time, I thought to myself, well, maybe, you know, I had a good shot at it, and I can just move on and transition back to education, which was fine for me. So there was no dream or desire to say, I'm going to be a pro football player one day, like a lot of kids do.
Gotcha. The interesting thing, too, is knowing a little about you is football may not have been the necessarily focus dream, but you're a big tennis player. You're a big tennis fan.
Yeah, we're going to go play some tennis, right?
There you go. Absolutely. So going back to the transition now. So now you're working at NASA, and part of this is your specialization, focusing on machines and trying to find areas where they're not performing efficiently or there might be a breakdown, automating the process. Describe your focus at NASA, the original focus.
Right. So my original research was using fiber optic sensors. So the same type of communication fibers that we use to talk with, to use them as a sensor to measure damage in an aerospace vehicle. So let's say the space shuttle. If you run this wing, along the wing, you run off optical fiber, you can make strain measurements along the wing. Or you can measure where there's a chemical leak, say, for instance, hydrogen. So we have hydrogen tanks, we have oxygen tanks. The new vehicle that we were replacing the shuttle with was called the X-33 vehicle, which had 2 big composite hydrogen and oxygen tanks. So we were going to wrap this tank with all these optical fibers, so you wouldn't have to go in and inspect it manually, which takes many hours. And human time. So the vehicle could launch, go to space, come back, and if there were damage, it could report back where the damage was, even before it landed. Wow. So you could go specifically to that location, repair without having to scan the entire tank surface. And so that was the goal, is to make machines and vehicles more user-friendly for the operator as well as for the maintenance person who's going to go fix them. And we did that, and the first optical fiber, we built a laboratory for making these optical fibers. So you start with a glass rod that long, you run it through a 3,000-degree furnace, you make it into taffy. As it comes out, you take an excimer laser and you use something called a waveguide phase mask, and you can actually etch the sensors in the glass before it gets coated with polyimide coating.
Oh, wow.
Incredible. We built this lab, we set it up, it was my group, and the day that we made our first sensors was the day that I got the phone call to become an astronaut.
So I just think it's so cool. I mean, you go from blowing up something in your mom's house to all of a sudden making fiber sensors that can detect where there might be damage. So one of your friends encouraged you to be a NASA astronaut. You get the application, but you don't fill it out. Share the story of just how you decided to ultimately become a NASA astronaut.
Right. So my friend Thomas Kashingaki, he was a PhD in aerospace engineering. And we had worked together on some projects, and he said, Leland, he had always wanted to be an astronaut, so he knew when the applications were due and everything. He said, Leland, you know, they're looking for material scientists this year. So he handed me this application, and I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, and I set it down. That same year, another friend of ours, he applied and he got in, Thomas, named Charlie Camarda. And so I said to myself, if NASA's letting knuckleheads like that in to be astronauts, maybe I can be one too. So I applied for the next selection, which was for the class of the 1998 class, and I got in. 2,500 people applied, 120 people were interviewed, and 25 of us were chosen for that class.
When you look at being an astronaut in general, it's only a class of what, 362 total?
Total. Since the beginning of the Mercury and Gemini program, it's been about 362 people that have been selected as astronauts.
Wow. Share with us a little about your training, because I think a big part of your storyline is losing your hearing. The way you did it, though, very unique, along with a prophecy that actually predicted it.
Right.
So give us a little of the backstory of just how you lost your hearing and the prophecy that kind of predicted it, so to speak.
So I was working, you know, we go through basic training, land survival, water survival. We learn how to fly these jets, these high-performance jets that go Mach 1.3. Had done all of that, and then my first technical assignment was to work with the Russians, helping translate the procedures from Russian to English. So we were like a verifier once the interpreters translated the procedure over. And I've been in Moscow working there, and then my boss said, hey, we need someone to be there with the first Expedition 1 crew, who was, the commander was a Navy SEAL, Bill Shepard. And so I was kind of following him around, helping him go through things, double checking his procedures and different things. And once he launched into space, then it was my time to start training. And so I think it was in 2001, I was going into something called EVA training, extravehicular activity, the white Michelin Man suit that we wear down in the water to train, but it's to get us ready for doing spacewalks in zero gravity. And 4 days before this training session, I went to my parents' 35th wedding anniversary and was sitting in a car with my cousin, and she had a friend of hers with her who I didn't know. Her name was Jeanette Suarez. And Jeanette was very prophetic. She was a minister in a church in North Carolina. And, you know, she turned to me, she said, Leland, I want to share something with you. I'm like, okay. She goes, something's going to happen to you. No one's going to know why this happened. There'll be specialists from around the world that will see your case and they won't know why this happened. She said, you will be healed of this. You will fly in space, and this will be your testimony that you share with the world. And so I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, okay, I've trained, you know, land survival, water survival, flying jets, and just came back from Moscow and working with the first crew that went to the space station, and okay, I hear you.
Did you connect the dots to what would happen in 4 days? Like, did you look and say, what's happening in 4 days here?
No clue, no clue. And then, you know, we have the service, and then I fly to Houston on Monday, and on Tuesday morning at 9:28 a.m., I go completely deaf. They put me into the suit. There was a little pad called a Valsalva pad. It's a styrofoam block that if you're the kind of person that needs to clear your ears with your fingers, you press your nose against that so you can't get your your hands into the helmet. And about 10 feet down in the water, I go, oh my goodness, my little pad's not in there. And so I try to kind of muscle through it and, you know, do these kind of things to clear my ears. We get down to 25 feet, I hear nothing but static. And I tell the test director to turn the volume up. They rush me out, they pop my helmet off. The flight director who is, the flight surgeon who's there to kind of monitor all the medical issues, he's talking to me and I see his lips moving like why is he not speaking?
Right.
And he touches my ear and there's blood coming out of my ear. You know, so there's something obviously majorly wrong, and they rush him to the hospital. And one of the world-renowned ear, nose, and throat doctors, he starts to look at me. They operate, they go and look around to see if there's any damage to the inner workings of my ear. They don't find anything. I'm in the hospital bed. I'm recovering. My hearing starts slowly coming back. You know, it's just one of these moments where, like, what is going on here?
Right.
And then this friend of mine comes down who was at my parents' service, their 35th wedding anniversary, and she says, remember what, she didn't say, she wrote on a legal pad, remember what Jeanette said. And so that gave me some hope to think that, okay, I'll get through this, and maybe I will fly in space. But still, the flight surgeons were saying, you will never fly in space because
they gave you a letter, right, saying that you're not going to fly, right?
You're done. And so it was just not giving up, believing in yourself. I remember, you know, this prophecy from Jeanette, but you know, my hearing came back to the point where I was, you know, functional to hear again. This ear is still a little bit, you know, probably like 60 dB down, which is pretty significant. Went and did a job in Washington working in education to kind of pass, you know, kind of waiting to see what was going to happen with me. And then the Columbia accident happened in 2003. February 1st, 2003, we lost Space Shuttle Columbia. And
on that was one of your really good friends.
David Brown. He was a flight surgeon. He was actually the flight surgeon who was running the investigation for the mishap with me. So he was constantly working with me, working with the other doctors, and trying to figure out the smoking gun that would help me get back on flight status. And now he's gone. And as astronauts, our job is to help console the families when we've lost our fallen heroes. And I went to his parents' home on the night of the accident. His father says to me with tears in his eyes, he says, Leland, my son is gone, and there's nothing you can do to bring him back. But the biggest tragedy would be if we don't continue to fly in space to honor them by carrying on their legacy. And I mean, we all just started crying together.
Absolutely.
And from that point on, you know, we were going around the country to the different memorial services for our 7 astronaut heroes. And on one of those flights, as we were taking off from Washington, the chief flight surgeon, whose name was Rich Williams, he, you know, had this little notebook. He was taking notes. He was watching me clear my ears, and on descent, clear my ears. And when I was done with this education program at headquarters and about to head back to Houston, he called me in his office and he said, "Leland, I want to share something with you." He said, "I've been watching you. I've been watching you clear your ears." He said, "I don't see any reason why you can't fly in space. I'm not going to let you do a spacewalk or get back in the jet, because the jet, you know, you can have a decompression, the canopy can go off, or those kind of things. But he says, for you to fly in space, you know, the atmosphere and the shuttle is, you know, kind of like what it is here. Unless there's something that really bad happens on that, everyone will lose their hearing. So I'm going to let you fly." So I go back to Houston with this, you know, kind of get out of jail free card, you know,
yes.
to the flight surgeons there, and I get assigned to a flight soon after that. So it was an incredible moment.
So ultimately 2 missions in space, 2008, 2009,
Right.
over 565 hours logged in space, which is huge. Share a little bit about just, you know, part of your responsibility was working a robot. Give us a little bit of especially the missions overall, and just honestly like what it's like to fly. Because I mean, you're going crazy. What is it, like every 90 minutes around
the planet? Yeah.
So share with us what it's like to be on a mission in space.
Right. So you know, you're on the shuttle. You're 3, 2, 1 liftoff. You're shaking. You're vibrating, and you're doing your job, and you're getting to space in 8.5 minutes, and then you convert this rocket ship into now your home, where you're going to be sleeping and living and working and preparing your meals. And we take about a day and a half, 2 days to dock to the International Space Station. Once we get there, my job then on the first mission is to actually take this 22,000-pound Columbus laboratory, which is the building block of the space station, use a robotic arm, reach in, grab it, and then attach it to the space station. And now when you think about this piece, it was the European Space Agency's Columbus laboratory. So this piece being added to the space station would allow the European astronauts to live on board the space station for 6 months at a time. But until this piece was added, you know, they had to just go up and down with the Soyuz or the shuttle. And
I'm
so,
sure this is no cheap object, right?
Oh, it's probably in the billions.
There's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders.
You know? And so I remember when I got the assignment, one of the German flight controllers who was in mission control, he came up to me and said, "Mr. Melvin, we've been waiting 10 years. Don't screw it up." And so as I'm installing this thing and it's getting closer and closer, I just remember this refrain, don't screw it up, you know. But we got everything there safely, and it was a most joyous moment because we had Leo Eihart, who was a European Space Agency astronaut, on board. And Hans Schlegel was another astronaut who was also ESA, and so it was just a big celebration. The first female commander on the mission, Dr. Peggy Whitson, was the space station commander. So she was in charge of Russian colonel, French general. You know, she's a civilian. So it lets you know how far we've come to have, you know, this woman scientist and engineer being in charge of these military generals and colonels. And she invited us over to dinner in the Russian segment after we had this, you know, installation. And it looks like kind of like a Benetton commercial or something. You know, you have African American, Asian American, French, German, Russian, first female commander, breaking bread, traveling at 17,500 miles per hour, going around the planet every 90 minutes, watching a sunrise and a sunset every 45, and listening to Sade while you're floating food to each other's mouths. It was kind of surreal, you know.
But I mean, I think to me that's got to be so rewarding, but at the same time too, so neat to see just these people that our countries used to be fighting.
Right.
And all of a sudden now you're working together, you're on a shared mission, you're eating together after creating something amazing. What was that like? I mean, just looking around and seeing that these are people that our countries used to be at war.
Right.
And now we're in space working together and we're sharing a meal.
Yeah, I mean, it lets you know that in the trenches, when people are rolling up their sleeves to get a job done, that's where the work happens. I mean, at the higher levels, the political levels, and people could be arguing and bickering about, you know, countries and economies and things, but in the working level, you know, everyone wants the same thing. They want their children to be happy. They want to be fed. They want education for their kids, and they want to help advance our civilization to be the best that it can be. And so working with Yuri in space it was a wonderful thing. You know, I speak a little Russian, and he speaks a little bit of English, and we were communicating, but just working as a team, looking back at the planet from this vantage point. It was just amazing to see the sunrise, sunset, but also flying over Afghanistan and Iraq and these places where there is war going on. But from space, it's beautiful. The Nile River, the Mediterranean, the snow-capped mountains, Mount Everest. I mean, all these things are just simply stunning.
Wow.
And I think the more people that have an opportunity to go there and see how grand and beautiful the planet is, it fundamentally changes you. And it's something called the orbital perspective. You have a shift in consciousness when you see the planet in that way, and you come back and you want to do good.
Well, give us one tip, because you do a lot of work in STEM and STEAM. And give us one tip for parents, for those that say, I want my kid to be more like you. I want them to be an explorer. I want them to be in STEM. I want them to be a scientist. I want to be a researcher. What would you give us as one tip as we wrap up?
I think the biggest tip is to be engaged with what your kids are interested in. I mean, if they're playing Call of Duty, ask them about Call of Duty and know that that hand controller that they're using is probably a very similar hand controller that I used to install the Columbus on the International Space Station. Use that as a teaching moment where they are. And so the interest, the peer culture, and then the academics, if they're combined in like a Venn diagram, that is a sweet spot for them gaining this knowledge of education and what education should be. And then anything that you do, whether it's going outside looking at the stars at night or building a Lego set or a FIRST Robotics, whatever it is, use those moments to bond with your child and get engaged and be inspired and be motivated.
Well, I greatly appreciate you coming on this show. I greatly appreciate all you've done to be an American hero, to be the first person not only to be in the NFL and be drafted, but more importantly to be a NASA astronaut, traveling off planet twice, building space stations, but also too, just pushing the boundaries as a STEAM explorer. So greatly appreciate all you've done for our country and for coming on the show and sharing all of your wisdom and expertise.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's fantastic.